So welcome to Church History, welcome to 401 Church History and to chapter 5 as we come to look at Son of God, Creator or Created. Just before we do that, a little bit of a book review. Starting off with Diamond McCulloch's done a DVD series called The History of Christianity. It's really good. You can probably find it on YouTube or something. I definitely recommend it as a bit of Saturday night viewing with your pizza. Something to watch there. Good watching. I commend to you as you're looking for, as you begin to narrow down and work out what assignments you are looking to do. You look around the library, you might find particular people who will do quite easy to read chapters on some of the folk that you're particularly looking at. Michael Reeves is an excellent author, highly recommend him, especially in the area of Reformation. He's done quite a lot there. In this particular book, he focuses, in terms of your assignments here, Martin Luther, he's got a chapter on, and Friedrich Schleiermacher. And I know that there used to be, if there isn't still, an essay on him that you can write about. So look around the library and see what else you can see that's sort of useful. Invariably, one or two of you students have come across Nick Page and his rather good A Nearly Infallible History of Christianity or A Nearly Infallible History of the Reformation. These are both very good. They are very biased. They're very biased. So don't worry about that. Just be aware of that. That's what you need to be. And be careful here of the humour, so that I think you're old enough and you've got enough brains to work out what's a joke here and what's being for real. So if you were to quote him, be careful. I did quote this book in my Church History MA, but I quoted it as a poor example of how to summarise somebody. So thank you very much, Nick, for that. Great fan of this. But nonetheless, that's how I proceeded to use his book in my essay, so do be careful. This book, a little less funny and a little more on the button. So, very good. This one covers the entire course that we're looking at. This one, just the Reformation period. Now you'll see in our notes that there's a small one-liner to do with the Desert Fathers at the end of all this. And it's a real shame. Somewhere along the lines, some of the students complained, "Oh, there's so much in the course, we can't keep up, we can't cope." And so I had to cull a ton of stuff out of the course, and the Desert Fathers was one of the ones that got culled. So I'm sorry about that. There's loads of different books on the Desert Fathers. Here's some original source type stuff, which I do commend to you for your reading. Perhaps it will come up in some spirituality course that you will do. But you should try and make a note somewhere in your life that the Desert Fathers were not really addressed. So here we go. Session 5. Son of God, Created or Creator. Here you go. Here's my Jesus. And we're going to see. And as we look at Jesus, we're going to be continuing to trace the development of the Trinity as started in Tertullian. We're going to continue to mull over whether the conversion of Constantine was a good thing, especially as we come to looking more at politics. We're going to see how power, politics and religion start mixing. And we're going to ask, what is inside of Jesus? How divine, how human is he? And how do we talk about that? How do we express that? So, we are looking to find the language of how we talk about how Jesus relates to God. We never really seem to have much of a problem with the Holy Spirit, so that's why that doesn't really come up much here in this course. But one of the early ideas was this concept of dynamic monarchianism. Dynamic monarchianism. Mon, one, archianism, rule, dynamic, power. Okay, so we're really keen on one God, not a problem. We're very keen on one God. So how is it then that Jesus can do what he does? Well, it's because he's got the dynamis, he's got the power in him. So a key question to be asking yourself as we go through this course is, how does Jesus differ from Moses or Elijah? What is it that's different about Moses or Elijah? here one of the dangerous heresies here is that of adoptionism. There's a nice bloke, Jesus. Let's give him a bunch of power, the dynamis, and see what he can do with it. So this is the adoptionism aspect. And there's a guy here called Paul of Samosata, and he argues for this position. And he uses this word, homoousia. Homoousia. He uses it to talk about how Jesus is the same stuff. We've got some blue tack here. See, same stuff as God, and he's using it in his analogy. Now, here's the problem: we Orthodox will later want this word for a different purpose, but because Paul of Samosata, because he used that word, we're not keen on that word. But we will see that it's actually a very useful word for what we want to go on and use it for. Okay, so one of the other ideas was modalistic monarchianism. Here we are, modalistic monarchianism. Mon, one, archianism, rule. You're getting the hang of it now, aren't you? Modalistic, different modes of God. So here we see the analogy is more to do with how there's your God, but then there's your Spirit, and there's your Son, and there's your Father, and so there you are. Now, the problem with this approach to God, it's in my view ever so slightly near the docetic end of the spectrum, the Clark Kent Superman end of it, because you don't really know what sort of God you're talking about. Who is this God that you've got before you? As you see the different modes of God, he unfolds himself, Father in creation, the Son in the incarnation and redemption, the Holy Spirit in sanctification. So that's the image of this. And the question to be asking yourself here is, who is on the cross? Is it the Spirit? Is it the Son? Is it the Father? There was a heresy called Patripassianism, and it was the idea that it's the Father that's on the cross dying. And the thing is if your view is modalistic monarchianism, then you don't know what mode God is in at this one point. And so here you find that that God has not revealed himself. You thought you'd managed to figure it out, but here God has not revealed himself. So this ends up being a disappointing answer. So along comes a bloke called Arius. Now Arius, he taught that there's a real difference between the Father and the Son. That Christ was neither God nor man, but something in between. Ooh, careful there. Careful there. Something in between. Not fully God, not merely man. The Son is a created being. He's the first created being, but, and here's a key phrase, there was a time when he was not. This is an Arian view. This is Arius. There was a time when Jesus was not, when the Son of God was not. There was a time when he was not. And that becomes a key aspect. Now, Arius, very clever with his PR, so he goes into song, and so lots of people are learning his doctrine courtesy of songs, and it's in some ways it's because of Arius that later people will be not sure about how we feel about singing in church. Thank you, Arius, for that. Now, what I'd like you to see for a moment is some Ribena, and consider some Ribena, because what Arius is trying to do is he's trying to consider Ribena as being pure divine. All right, I have here liquid divine, and then here's a glass. Here you go. And then I pour into here water, liquid human. All right. So now I have a glass of human and plenty of divine. And what Arius is trying to do is to pour 1 pint of Ribena and 1 pint of water into 1 pint pot. hopefully you can sort of see where that's going. It makes for a really good children's talk as long as you've got a tray that's deep enough to cope with the spillage. Because you have your sample water, clear as clear, and you have your sample Ribena, red as red, and then you have your Arian Jesus, really obviously pink, neither divine nor human. And so you're left going, well, what is that all about? What does Arius think he's doing? So think Ribena as you come to wondering what kind of Jesus do we have here. We will come back to Ribena later. So, Emperor Constantine says, look, this is all a bit tedious. Would it be possible if we could just come together and be united in our understanding of God? And so he gathers the Council of Nicaea 325. As he gathers them, he goes around, says Eusebius of Caesarea in his ecclesiastical histories, he goes around greeting these bishops, many of whom have been part of, they've been tortured for their faith under previous emperors. And bear in mind, this is 325. Diocletian persecution ended 303, the Great Persecution. So this is really only 20 years on from some serious persecution. There are plenty of these church leaders who are missing eye sockets, says Eusebius of Caesarea, but the emperor would kiss the empty eye socket, or where a limb had been removed, would kiss the wounded scar. Good pastoral moment there to enjoy from Emperor Constantine. The three characters that you're looking at in this part is a guy called Hosius of Cordova. Hosius of Cordova is a Spanish bishop, and I suppose I should be saying Cordova, shouldn't I? Hosius of Cordova, and he has Constantine's ear. He's going to be a key person. Eusebius of Nicomedia. If this was a pantomime, you'd all boo at this point. Eusebius of Nicomedia. He presents himself as the leader of the Arians. Arius himself is not allowed to come and give his case because he's not a bishop, and this is a council of bishops. So he's not allowed to do this. And there's another guy called Eusebius of Caesarea, and he keeps popping up, as you've seen time and again. Now, the meeting starts off with the Arians taking the lead, and they propose a creed. And the creed is so strongly worded that even the middle ground people are offended by it, and so very quickly the Arians take that off the table. Clearly that's not going to get anywhere. Eusebius of Caesarea suggests using a creed that he uses back in Caesarea. Why don't you use my creed? Now, what the creed does, is his creed, is it acknowledges the deity of the Son, but it avoids this word, homoousia. It avoids this word here. And the Arians go, yeah, fair enough, we're all right with that. And because they say, yeah, all right, everyone else goes, well, there must be something wrong with it, because that can't be right. And so it's Bishop Hosius of Cordova who then whispers, well, look, why don't you find a way in which we can slip this homoousios word into describing the relationship of the Father, knowing that this is a word that the Arians really loathe. And so this is what ends up being in our Nicene Creed. Okay, so the creed that you say every Sunday, the Nicene Creed, it's actually the Constantinopolitan Nicene Creed, because Constantinople 381 Council will make a few changes. We will look at some of those as we come to it. And finally, at the end of that creed, there's an anathema attached, cursing all those who hold Arius's view. Now, the homoousia problem will continue and will carry on being a problem for us as different people work it out, how they're going to, whether they like it or don't like it as part of it. What I want you to do is I want you to see the I in the middle of this homoousia, and I want you to think about how there is an I in the word like. I haven't written that very well. That says hike. It's supposed to say like. Okay? So this is how Jesus is like the Father, whereas this is more of the same as. And so that's the key difference between these two words. Yes, it's just one letter, one iota, but the difference is that Jesus is the same as the Father, homoousia, or Jesus is like the Father, homoiousia. And that's your problem. So after Nicaea, everyone goes back to where they were, and you think, hurrah, sorted. But it turns out not to be. And Arianism does not simply just die off. Pause for a moment in the whole world of theology as we see Constantine dies, 337. He's baptized by Eusebius of Nicomedia, the Arian. What? How did that happen? Never mind, he's being baptized, because it's his local bishop, he's being baptized by Eusebius of Nicomedia on his deathbed, and as a result of this, now the empire splits into two. Now, because you've split the empire into two, it's going to proceed to sort of define much of how East and West relate to each other. Greek-speaking, Latin-speaking, different emperors are going to be Orthodox and Arian at different times, and they're going to be winding each other up in different ways. And so this is about to be problematic for us as we see the division of the empire. Athanasius, I may have mentioned him before, the Bishop of Alexandria. He's the one who's holding out for what we have now as orthodoxy, but he finds himself being used as a yo-yo character by different bishops by different emperors who proceed to exile him according to their whims and favours. He finds himself exiled 5 times during his lifetime. So you've got different ways, different languages and words that were tried. Heterousios, a fairly extreme position from the Arians. The homoiousios, the moderates, and the homoousios, the orthodox, as they were trying to work out how to do this. But the question you have to keep coming back to is to say, look, Athanasius really, really argues for this position, homoousios. Why? Why was he right? And was this what we should be doing? So, the thing to remember is that monotheism was never in doubt. Monotheism always solid. Sure, we're happy with that. But certain questions like, did Jesus need to pray? And how you go about answering that question often says a lot about how you see Jesus. It also says a lot about how you see prayer as well. How come Jesus doesn't know everything? Is that what you thought prayer was about? Never mind. And so the Arians would love certain scriptures like Hebrews chapter 1 verse 5. You are my son, today I have begotten you. And so they would like things like that. And they came up with phrases like this. The unbegun made the Son a beginning of things originated and advanced him as a son to himself by adoptionism. So you're actually being... Where's my ring gone? I must put the ring down somewhere. By adoption. Now, the key phrase there is God being called the unbegun. The unbegun. And that becomes a useful phrase as we begin to understand what Arians really think God is about. Now, a quote from a book called Christianity for the Perplexed. Excellent book, especially if you're doing an essay that's anywhere near this subject. Really good book. Christianity for the Perplexed. He says, no matter how the Arians huff and puff, what they preach is a creature promoted to the status of a god. So Athanasius says, the thing is that we've always worshipped Jesus, but we know that there's only one God. So you do the maths. The thing is that we always know that forgiveness comes through Jesus, but we know that only God can forgive. You do the maths. Okay, that's not a quote of Athanasius, you understand. But you get the idea of how his argument goes. And so Athanasius argues against the Arians that what you're doing is you're doing a bottom-up argument. You are arguing up towards God. You're saying things like, human dads have sons, and so of course that means that there's a time when those sons were not, and so therefore, you can apply that to God the Father. You can say, well, therefore there was a time when Jesus was not. There was a time when the Son was not. And Athanasius said that if the Son was not eternal, like God the Father, then it made the Son a creature, not a creator. It's on the creature side of the line, not the creator side of the line. And if Jesus is on the creature side of the line, and not the creator, if it's on this side of the line, then that means that what we have is a Jesus who is made for us, not us who is made for Jesus. And so that becomes a key part of Athanasius' understanding. Nicaea had referred to this word begotten, referred to the Son as being begotten. And Athanasius says this is key. This is key. We humans, we make donuts. We make donuts. We don't make babies. I mean, okay, we do, but it's not really how we talk. That's not really the phrase we would use. We would say we beget babies. Babies are born, but we use a different verb to that. What Athanasius is trying to do is demonstrate the relationship between the Father and the Son, and so he uses the language of begetting as opposed to making. And so that's what puts Jesus on this side of the line, the creator side of the line, and not this side, the created side of the line. He says, don't start with God as the unbegun. Instead, start with God as Father. Because the moment you start with God as Father, you have the eternal Son. So, I'm going to stop there. You've got a bit more, I see, on page 36, but I really feel that we've done enough. And I will see you very shortly for chapter 6. Thank you.